Hey everybody, it's Jerry Rasco, and today we are together to talk about the Avengers. Specifically, we are going to be looking at Avengers number 3. So, brand new series, really. We've just started off, and this is only our 4th episode. So, if you're new here and you want to catch up on the playlist, you can check that out here on the channel and catch up to where we're at. We also have a number of other series if you're new here as well, and I'm going to explain each of those to you with some artwork, because if you're not a subscriber, you're going to want to click that subscribe button. When we reach 1,000 subscribers on the channel, and we are on our way to that number, I am going to be picking subscribers at random to win some free artwork. One-of-a-kind, hand-drawn artwork by yours truly. We have the Incredible Hulk. We also have, as we're talking today, the Avengers, so there's that series as well. We have the original review series on the channel. That's the Amazing Spider-Man. You could win that piece of art. We have the X-Men. That's also one of the newer ones that we have. So, again, if you're looking to catch up from the beginning, this is there's not as many in the playlist as Spider-Man, for example, so you might want to go back and check those out. And then we have 2 upcoming series as well that will be kicking off in the channel shortly. We have Captain America, and we have the Fantastic Four. So overall, all you have to do is click that subscribe button, which is 100% free of cost, and you could win artwork. The artwork will even be shipped to you for free. Again, no purchase necessary. Just be a subscriber. We'll be picking the 6 at random, and those folks are going to win an original piece of artwork. So there's nothing stopping you. Click that subscribe button. Now, today we're talking about the Avengers. I don't have an Avengers t-shirt. If you've seen any of my other videos, sometimes I have a Spider-Man cap, or I've got a number of different Spidey shirts, X-Men shirts, stuff like that. I do not have an Avengers shirt, but I do have this cool Iron Man shirt, so I thought I'd wear that in today's video to kind of get me in the mood for some Avengers. So, that all said, let's head over. Let's check out this comic together, and let's see what's up. So this is the Avengers number 3. We have Jack Kirby back on, not back, but still on the art duties here with Paul Reinman as the inker. We'll see that in the credits inside in just a moment. But this is a good cover. It's a very, again, sort of classic Jack Kirby cover. You've got your, I'm not going to call them villains. In this case, I'm going to say antagonists. In the foreground, our protagonist reacting to seeing them, charging at them. And so we've got, our protagonist and antagonist all together in the center of the image, which is nice. So you have a nice centralized piece. It really draws the eye there with all the bright colors. And then you have some very Kirby rubble going on as the Hulk is breaking down this wall to reach the Avengers, and it appears to be like in a tunnel. So it's very angular, sort of quick angular lines that he uses primarily for, as I said, the term I use is rubble, but broken stone, broken masonry, stuff like that. Very, very iconic of Jack Kirby and his style. Want to point out, Iron Man, my guy Iron Man, has a new armor. So as of Avengers number 2, he was still in the golden armor. So I guess that would be considered the Mark II. The Mark I is the gray original armor, and then immediately it went to gold. And now we've got sort of a proto-classic. I think this one, the gold and the red and gold, this is kind of the iconic armor, I think. It certainly lasted for a really long time. This is sort of a prototype of this, and it's going to be getting there soon. So, but this is our first red and gold Iron Man armor, so that's cool to see. So let's jump in here. I always tell you guys at the beginning of each video, these are scanned PDF copies of these comics. So that's why we see these old ads in here. This comic is from 1963. So, here we have our transistor radio wristwatch for $4.98. It's a fun ad and really does speak of the times. But I love this format because it allows us to zoom in on things. It allows us to very easily view it together on the computer screen, as opposed to trying to set up an overhead camera and then flipping pages back and forth. This is just an awesome format for what we're doing here on YouTube. We've got the team, so obviously, and then we have the again, I'll call them antagonists. And to remember, we'll see that just in a second. But let's talk real quick about the creative team. We still have Stan Lee writing. We have pencils by Jack Kirby, inks by Paul Reinman, and then letters by Sam Rosen. And we don't talk about the letters a lot unless there's an error. That's one of the key, in my opinion, elements of a good good letterer, is if you don't notice that they're there, they're doing a great job. And one thing I did want to just point out is that Sam Rosen and his brother were both letterers in the early silver age of Marvel Comics like this. And between the two of them, plus Artie Simic, the three of them pretty much lettered every comic book that was coming out from Marvel at the time. So you've got three people doing just yeoman's work of all these comics that are coming out every month. So really impressive in terms of the throughput that they were, putting out. And then, being incredibly consistent. Like I said, it's very rare that we see lettering errors. And so it's like, wow, that's really amazing that how much work they did put in. One thing to know, I think back then, and somebody, if somebody knows otherwise, please let me know. But if I'm not mistaken, a lot of times the letterers would not only do, so all of your dialogue lettering, they would also add in any of your large, like this title font, any sound effects, things of that nature. But they also did the border lines, also did all the line work of the borders, of the panel borders. I think that's the case. I've read that before. That may change. That may be different from letterer to letterer, but that was my understanding, is that in the early days, the letterers would do that. So that's pretty cool. The Submariner image here on this splash page is actually from the previous issue. So if you go back and look at that video, there towards the end of the issue, there's a preview of like, hey, next issue we're going to see Submariner, and they use the exact same image, and then surrounded it by the Avengers. Not my favorite kind of splash page. It's no secret. I prefer jumping into the story versus wasting a page on a montage image that could be another cover. Why are we doing this? I've speculated in the past as to why, but in this case, it's just one of those things that I don't care for as much as, again, jumping into the story. Last thing I'll mention here, this is a thing I don't like, and this is predominantly due to the coloring technology of the time. Again, remember, this is 1963, so you have what's called 4-color printing. There are only 4 colors of ink that are used, and they're mixed together in different ratios to create dot patterns that our eyes translate into different shades. So you've got cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. And when you mix all those colors together, you get different shades. So the problem I have here is the Hulk's hair is drawn, but because it's not inked in black and it's not colored with a different shade of green, it just reads like part of his head, sort of almost balding. And I don't like that. So I would like to see either a different shade of green on the Hulk's hair or more black shadows to help separate, to identify that it is actually his, sort of either dark green or black hair on his head. When it's all colored one solid flat green, it's just harder to differentiate, right? So we get into the story here. The Avengers, again, having their meeting. So the previous issue, just a recap, it just kind of boiled down to the Hulk. So the Hulk being one of the founding members of the Avengers in Avengers number 1. Well, in Avengers number 2, a character called the Space Phantom uses the Hulk's likeness to sow discord among the team, so that once they find out that it wasn't the Hulk, that the Space Phantom was using his image to, cause problems, the Hulk takes it personal, because again, this is not, in 1963, this is not Savage Hulk, Hulk smash that we're familiar with. This is a Hulk who he's not Bruce Banner smart, but he's definitely more talkative. He has a wider vocabulary. He's much more ornery, conniving, I guess. Certainly grumpy. And so after he was like, you guys don't trust me, you showed me what you really think about me when you thought it was me, not the Space Phantom, and he decides to just leave the Avengers. So, story-wise, the Avengers are meeting and trying to decide, what do you do? Part of the reason of having the Hulk in the Avengers was, in essence, so they could keep an eye on him. Now he's gone. What do? They just leave him be? And they're like, no, we can't really do that. So Iron Man is going to use this crazy device to try to reach out to the other heroes of the Marvel Universe to see if they can help them find the Hulk. The one thing I did mention in my notes here is Avengers headquarters. Is it just like white limbo? Because there's no background. So here they're in their meeting room. There's no background. All you have to do is a simple line, not a horizon line, but just a line where the floor meets the wall. Maybe some molding along the bottom of the flooring, a hint of a photo or a portrait on the wall, a door, something like that, just to put them in a space. Because then it cuts to this device. Iron Man's like, I'm going to use this device to communicate with everybody. There's still no background behind that. I understand. You want to focus on Iron Man. You want to focus on the machine. There's a lot of dialogue. But again, a simple wall to let us know like what kind of space you're in will really help. And we've got that. So when you go to the Fantastic Four, what's it called? I'm stuck. Eventually it becomes Four Freedoms Plaza, but it's not Four Freedoms Plaza at the time. It is the Baxter Building at the Fantastic Four's headquarters in back then. So Iron Man's projects his image to the Baxter Building and starts to communicate with the Fantastic Four. And every time we come into a space, so he finds the thing first, there's a setup. We see chairs, tables, lamps, a mirror. He's getting ready to go out. It goes to the lab. We see the lab. We see technology, and then you can get to a point where the characters are just talking and you can drop out the background and that's perfectly fine. Iron Man finds Spidey. There's a background. So why, when we first find the Avengers, there's no background elements to help us set them in what space they're in? So that needs to happen. The other thing I just said was like, man, this is an overly complicated communication device to send this sort of ghostly transmission that can communicate. You're talking to, now we'll get here. He's talking to Spider-Man. This works for Spider-Man. That's fine because Spidey doesn't have a headquarters, but obviously the Fantastic Four, technologically advanced. Call them in like a video phone or something like that. That's fine. We'll see also he contacts the X-Men. Same thing, technologically advanced. Reach out to them via some sort of advanced video phone. That would work as well. But I don't know. It just is overly complex, I guess, is what I'm going for. One thing I want to point out for most of these characters, and this is something that bugs me a ton, is shadows. So when they're here in Avengers headquarters talking, there's sort of some shadows like under the chair, but there aren't shadows under the character's feet. Same thing here as we see the Thing getting ready. He's got a coat. He's putting on a scarf. He's putting on a disguise so he can go out. And there's no shadow underneath him. But when we get to this image of like the living room or whatever area this is, there's dark shadows underneath the chair. There's certainly shadows on the furniture, not necessarily under. We could have shadows underneath. Still the Thing is casting no shadow. We get to the lab. The devices that Reed Richards is working on have shadows, even a little bit of shadow there under him. Next panel, they cast no shadows. Now, the lighting is so intense that one of Reed's legs is completely in shadow. So the light is hitting and it's not reaching this other leg or his other arm. So he should be casting a big shadow in that same direction because there's really some very directed lighting and it doesn't happen. And so these characters are just sort of floating in space. And that does bother me quite a bit. I want my characters set if they're standing on something, and a shadow helps establish that ground beneath them, especially if you're not going to draw something as detailed as like flooring or carpet or a sidewalk or something like that. Now these three characters are just floating in white space, and that doesn't work. So you're going to go through the effort of drawing in shading for things like their boots and gloves underneath Reed's arm, stuff like that. Draw the shadows underneath. Now, Iron Man might not cast a shadow because he's like a projection of light. That's fine. And that even sets him apart separately, that he's not really there. But the other characters need shadows. Same thing here. Spidey, this is a very nice down shot. So when I talk about shots, what I mean is the angle of the drawing. We, as the reader, our eyes essentially are the camera. Each of these images is like us looking through the viewfinder, finding that perfect angle, and taking a picture of it in a moment in time. So here, what we've done for the drama, Spidey is on a wall, webbing up criminals who are firing guns at him, and we are looking down the building as he's standing, on the building like this. So we're up here looking down at it. That's a great angle. It's a very dramatic shot. You can see little small people down below, cars and stuff. So that part is great. The perspective of the building that Spidey is standing on, also very well done. However, because you have no shadows, Spidey casts no shadow, the criminals cast no shadows, none of the architecture of the building, any of the windows, bricks, nothing has any shading or shadows on it. It just is very flat. So yeah, Spidey's standing on it, but what is it? It just reads as just a sort of flat green surface. And then just a coloring note. The other thing is, if you want to do a down shot like this and you've established the ground, so you've established cars, people, a little sidewalk, don't color the road blue like the sky. Make it gray, make it brown, make it purple, make it yellow. I mean, there's another things, but just not sky blue. It's clear it's not the sky, but it's just one of those things that's, it's a choice. Every color you put on the page is a choice of what color you want to use. You've used green for the building so that Spidey's red and blue really pops off, and Iron Man's red and yellow really helps establish them color-wise, separate from the background. Do the same thing with this road. Don't do blue sky. So Spidey's webbed up the bad guys, and the webbing is very wild, very crazy. Obviously, it's not drawn the way in the 1963 that Steve Ditko would have done it, which is much more net-like type of stuff. This is more thick, goopy kind of stuff. Almost reminds me of like wasp beehive as opposed to spider web. But Iron Man, same thing. Hey, have you seen the Hulk? You know where we could find him? And Spidey's just like, I don't know what you're talking about. Now we know, by the way, we've seen a few versions of Spider-Man by Jack Kirby. You understand right here why he doesn't have the Spider-Man job and why Steve Ditko is the right guy for the job. In my opinion, Jack Kirby never got the Spider-Man costume, specifically the mask, right. It's like he just didn't really quite get that concentric circle of web pattern and just sort of does it as a up and down as opposed to what it is. So just never really gelled, and that's the truth, and that's just how it is. Sometimes there are some characters that just don't gel with an artist, and Spidey and Jack Kirby just never were a great pair in my opinion. I've also seen I think there's only one or two images of it out there, I think, of Jack Kirby drawing like Superman later after he left Marvel. He went to DC, and a Jack Kirby Superman just doesn't look right. You just go, it just doesn't fit in my opinion. So that's just, like I said, it's just an example. Not everybody is is meant to draw every character. His Avengers are awesome. His Thor is great. His X-Men are very good. Iron Man is terrific. Just not Spidey. Let's see. They go to the X-Men, and X-Men, same thing. They're like, hey, we're doing our thing. We don't know where the Hulk is. We'll let you know. But otherwise, leave us alone. So everybody's off the board. The Avengers are on their own. And this is one of those things where I've talked about this in other series, other videos, and that is a scene transition. So normally you don't, what we have here is Iron Man's projection talking to the X-Men. The X-Men are like, we don't know where the Hulk is. We'll let you know. Let us, leave us alone. Let us do our own business here. And you then cut, as you go to the next page, to Iron Man back, talking to the Avengers. That's great. That is a page transition. So we have one scene, and then we go to the next page, new scene. Terrific. However, it immediately changes scenes again because they're talking about how are we going to find the Hulk, and Thor's like, why not Rick Jones? And the Wasp is like, he maintains these shortwave radios, which is the Teen Brigade that Rick Jones established in the Hulk. You can go back and see my Hulk episodes where you see that happen. So it's just a way of communing of a bunch of teenagers using a radio hobby, basically, super fancy walkie-talkies, where you can talk in extremely long distances. And so that's what they do. So this is a thematic transition. She mentions he's a shortwave radio ham, what they call ham or operator. He's probably at his radio right now. And then the next image is Rick Jones sitting at his radio getting their message. That's a thematic scene change from panel to panel. So I'm okay with it. It works. If there was no mention of Rick, if they're like, gosh, I don't know how that's going to happen, what should we do? And then you cut to Rick Jones, that doesn't follow logic, right? How do you get from point A to point Z? This is A to B, and it makes great sense. So Rick goes looking for the Hulk and finds him. And, in typical Hulk fashion, somebody saw him, got scared. And Rick is like, listen, we gotta get you back to Doc Banner. Let's figure that out. And, convinces the Hulk to go to their secret cave lab where he can use gamma machines to change back and forth. I do want to note here as well, so as of issue 2 of the Avengers, the Hulk was still sporting kind of purple trunks. This was in his very short superhero phase. There was a point where Bruce Banner had gotten kind of what he thought was control, where he could turn back and forth into the Hulk at will using these machines, and he started sporting kind of little purple trunks, which is more of a hero type of costume as opposed to just he transformed into Hulk and his pants tore up. One issue later, we're back to purple torn pants. So just a note there. And then one more thing. This is something that I've found a lot in both the Hulk series that we've done and the Avengers here. Jack Kirby is not super consistent with the Hulk's digits. So what I mean by that is in this one, we have 4-toed Hulk. So you see a lot of 4-toed Hulk. And then at times we see 5-toed Hulk. So it's just sort of like, I think he's just kind of like, I'll fit in what I can fit in. And, I know I heard somebody one time, there's a lot of criticism of some of the 90s comic artists and how they did not enjoy drawing feet. So if you're familiar, there's a number of people, and I've heard a couple of those same artists talk about and say, if you're reading a comic and you're focusing on the character's feet, I've done a bad job as an artist. So I'm sure Jack is like, listen, nobody's counting the Hulk's toes. They're looking, going, oh wow, look him jump off and leap away with Rick Jones. That's cool. I am nitpicking, which is what we do on these series. So I'm noticing the inconsistencies between that. And it's something that's important. It's called continuity. You want to make sure that things are the same. If your character is wearing a tie in one panel, you want to make sure you keep drawing that tie until they deliberately take off the tie. Again, it just helps maintain consistency and keep the reader in the story. So he transforms back into Dr. Banner, but that doesn't last long because he didn't use enough gamma radiation and the Hulk's personality is too strong. And so he's going to transform back into the Hulk very, very quickly and escape and not give any attention to Rick Jones. So one of the things I mentioned again in my notes is this is a floating Hulk head. So as he's transforming, you see Bruce Banner's neck here. When he transforms into the Hulk, he's still on the pillow. This probably should have, this corner down here should have been green. Otherwise, it's just this floating head on a pillow. As he leaves and brushes Rick aside, again, same thing, same problem I have with the hair. Either go really dark, really black, or go with a different color in that area. When you just sort of draw the fringe of hair, basically it looks like he just has like a monk haircut. Like he's got a bald head on top and just this sort of fringe of hair across the middle, which is very weird. So Rick Jones gets to one of the radios in the Teen Brigade network that he's put together, and he responds back to the Avengers and goes, "Hey, I know where the Hulk is, and he's on the rampage." So they're going to go stop him. And we get your obligatory, everybody's transforming, gearing up, suiting up, whatever you want to call it, and heading out. So one of the things that is very indicative of the times in these very early 60s, as opposed to maybe some of your late 60s comics, like with the Spider-Man series, we're into like 1969, where the page composition expands. Here you notice there's tons of itty bitty little panels, 9 panels in a page. And we've talked about this in other series, but for anybody who's not familiar, the size, let me show you real quick. Cut back to me just for a second, just so I can actually give you a visual example here. Let's see, is this the one I want? Yeah. Here, I'll show you a page of my own comic book. So this is a page from my own comic book that I'm working on right now. This is issue 3 of my own comic. And this is the big moment where the bad guys are going to meet the good guys. And these are the good guys down here. These are the bad guys. This page is 11 by 17. So this is 17 inches by 11 inches. And then all the artwork inside, there's a border around. And so when you subtract the border, this ends up being like 10 and a quarter by 15. Okay. So everything has to fit within that realm. So here you see I've got four panels on a page. And right, 9 panels on this page. Let's get back to the comic. So that means if it's 10 and a half or 10 and a quarter inches and you've got a little bit of space in these are called gutters, the spaces in between. So you've got to factor that in as well. So these are probably each just about 3 inches wide and about little less than 5 inches tall, because again, you're losing space in the gutters there. So if it was 5, 5, 5, that would be 15. There'd be no space in between. So these are maybe 4.5 inches. So 3 by 4. That's really small. And you've got it over and over, page after page. So it just becomes really difficult to have super awesome, dynamic, explosive, energetic artwork fit into 3 inches by 4 inches. I mean, it's like drawing on a baseball card. And you're like, hey, I want to show this awesome image of Thor transforming or getting ready to take off, Iron Man flying through the sky, and you're drawing it on the size of a baseball card. Kind of tough. I did think it's interesting still, Iron Man is still flying standing up, as opposed to, that more traditional superhero, we'll go with Superman, arms forward, horizontal flying. Iron Man is still kind of flying upwards like this, which is kind of interesting. Reaches to where Rick Jones is, but it tries to Rick Jones tries to warn Iron Man, but it's too late, and boom, he gets hit by the Hulk, who's laying in wait. And this is good stuff. So now we're seeing a few slightly fewer panels, which is being used for the big action, which is really good. That's very important. There's good left to right action here. So what I mean by that is we read, as Western readers, we read from left to right, and then we go diagonal back down to the left, and then back to the right, and then diagonal down. So we read in a Z pattern with comics, and all of the artwork is pushing us into that direction. Things are moving from left to right, up to down. That's very good. The motion on this rubble that's being flung with Iron Man's repulsor rays towards the Hulk is very nice. That's great. And then he grabs a cactus and shoots cactus spines at Iron Man. I'm not sure this is how cactus spines work. In fact, I'm pretty sure I know this is not how cactus spines work. But it's an interesting idea, and it's at least visually interesting. The only problem is this breaks the 180-degree rule, and I don't know how I would fix it. I spent a lot of time as I was taking my notes trying to think about how would I do it differently, right? Because that's always the thing. I can point out and go, well, that's wrong. But the answer is, well, how else would you do it then? So things at the bottom of the left-hand page are moving from left to right, which is great. So that means Iron Man is on our readers, our left, Hulk is on the right. So now the Hulk is going to fling these needles at Iron Man. But we also want to move the reader's eye, which is what's happening here, from left to right on the page. So how do you do that? What happens is the Hulk and Iron Man don't do a do-si-do. So Hulk is over here, Iron Man's over here. They don't do a do-si-do and switch positions so that the Hulk can now fling stuff at Iron Man. We, the viewer, have changed. We have flipped over them, and we're on the other side. So now our image is reversed, and the way we're looking at it, Hulk is now on our left, Iron Man is on our right. Unless you show that movement from one side to the other, it can be confusing. It looks like the two figures have do-si-doed and now are on opposite sides. So one of the things you want to do is you can move around with your view as long as you don't cross that line and completely flip the imagery. So I'm not sure, again, I don't have a good solution for it, to be perfectly honest. You could do it to where maybe the Hulk is flinging the spines instead of fully to the right, maybe more towards the camera, towards us as the viewer, like kind of putting us into the view of Iron Man. You could also show from behind the Hulk and have him flinging them at Iron Man. Again, slightly changed in direction, but that would work. There's some tricks there that you could do to do it, but something to just be aware of when your art, when your image, when your scene is completely perpendicular to us, the reader, right? So like in the bottom of the left-hand page there is no angle. We are on a direct, straight 90-degree angle to that image. Here's the image. We are straight in the middle. Now you have a limited amount of angle that you can go to kind of view things without flipping over that 180 mark. So just something to watch out for. Interesting concept. Giant Man, but as Ant-Man. So he kind of goes back and forth. Yes, he's Giant Man, but he still can shrink and work and control ants as well. So he's got the best of both worlds. And so he and his ant buddies are going to come up with an idea, which is they're going to block up a stream underneath the Hulk, flooding him and dropping him, not basically taking the ground out from under him, which is an interesting concept. The figures here, again, the panels are so small that there's not much to them. In this one here, so especially in like this panel here up top, and then also in the next page a little bit, there's a little too much focus here, big time. There's a little too much focus on the Hulk being hairy. So it's one of the things that Jack Kirby did is he gave the Hulk hairy chest, hairy forearms. I have no problem with that. But when the figure is so small, it's a little too much. And it really dominates the form, and it ends up, it's very difficult then to start doing things like drawing the musculature, drawing the different cuts and levels of the anatomy, because everything is blurred out by these hatching marks of hair. You reach a point where you're so far away you wouldn't see it, especially in these itty bitty panels. So I wouldn't worry about it so much. This one is, to me, is particularly egregious. But yeah, there's a little too much focus there, for my opinion. I don't have a problem with it. I think it's a nice touch to make him seem even more savage, maybe. But yeah, sometimes when the character's that small, don't worry about it. Same thing, like, this was a big thing in the 90s. Everybody had stubble. Every character started, not shaving regularly, and having, stubbly chins and stuff like that to make them, I guess, look tougher. When you're so far away, those little dots end up looking like, like stickers on their face, like real big, like dots. If it's not up close, don't worry about it. Let's see what else we have in my notes just to make sure. Nope, that's that. Let's keep going. Again, one of those things where you got to be careful with this color. Needs more black in the hair of the Hulk to help separate it. Not a bad Hulk face overall. Sometimes it's real hit or miss. And we'll see that. It's consistency. Here's the Hulk's face, much more compact. The nose is a little shorter, big wide mouth, kind of big square head, pretty good. Then you get to this scene, which I really like. The pose of this running pose is excellent. It's kind of hard to draw somebody running with power. I know for me, whenever I need to do that and I need to draw running characters, I'll often reference football characters or football players. So I'll look up football players running, because their combination of power and speed really is much more superhero esque than maybe like a sprinter who's more form oriented. So like if you're looking for the Flash, maybe you're going to reference a sprinter. You're going to look at the Hulk. You're going to look at a football player, right? So that's really good, but just the difference in the face from here to here. One face is a little more stretched out, the other more compact. Again, it's just about consistency, right? And then I did have a question about this. How does the Hulk go down mid-jump? So you could jump in the air and gravity is going to pull you down. I don't know how you jump in the air and then control yourself to suddenly stop going up and then go down. It doesn't make a lot of sense. But it gives him a chance to escape or try to escape, and he gets to a train and literally flings a train car at Iron Man and Thor, which Thor promptly destroys. We're going to pretend that they know there's nobody in there. Maybe Iron Man's sensors told him there was nobody in there, and we just didn't see that. For me, again, just playing devil's advocate, I think it's fine to have them smash and see all the pieces coming past Iron Man and Thor as they continue towards the Hulk. I would have drawn this from the opposite angle. I would have shown the destruction and them coming at us, Thor smashing, the pieces coming around them. I think that's more dramatic. Anytime your heroes' faces are obviously always going to be more dramatic than showing them from behind. A back can't emote the way a face can. So that's one of the changes I would do there. Again, this is the Hulk being crafty, right? So he's got this crane on the train. He uses that to kind of scare off Iron Man. Thor's coming. He's got steel cable he wraps Thor up with. This is again, crafty, smart, not like super smart nuclear physicist Hulk, but smart. One one thing to note, again, as we move forward here, just so you'll see, just take a note of the train. This appears, in my opinion, to be an older steam train. Now, I don't know if steam trains were still regularly in use in 1963 versus your more modern diesel. But the point is, there's a cloud of smoke coming up out of the train. So there's a smokestack. And this comes into play in terms of what the Hulk does next, right? So one of the things the freight train is hauling is flour. And he grabs the flour and then he dumps it down the smokestack, which creates a more dense fog smokescreen so that Giant Man can't see him. And when they run into the tunnel, it peels Giant Man right off the train. Great. Here's my problem with this, though. The reason there's a smokestack is because there's fire. So if you're not familiar with steam engines and how steam engines work, there's a fire in the engine compartment, in the engine car. And that fire is used to boil water. And it's the steam that, when water turns to steam, expands. And when it expands, it pushes the piston, which moves the tires, or moves the wheels, and moves the train. So the smoke is a byproduct of the heat, the flame required for heat to boil water. When you dump a bunch of flour down that smokestack, you are now dumping flour on top of a big open hot fire. So one of two things is going to happen. Either the flour is going to ignite and explode, or the flour is going to snuff out the fire of the train, and the train's going to stop moving. So it's fine. Again, it's one of those things where, listen, it's the suspense of disbelief, right? Suspension of disbelief. We have a man that can become a giant. We have a giant green, super strong monster. We have a guy who claims to be a Norse god with a magic hammer. Like, we could suspend our disbelief about, would the flour put out the train? But if he has the flour and he's trying to use it to blind Giant Man to escape, just throw the bags of flour in his face and have him explode on his face and go, I can't see. Bang. He hits the tunnel. You're good to go. You don't need to go through the rigmarole of the smokestack for people like me that are reading behind, picking this apart to go, that doesn't work. Visually, art-wise, not bad. The whole train thing is pretty good. The whole sequence is done pretty well. We keep getting a sense that they're on the train, they're moving. A lot of motion lines help. The angle helps. The one thing I did question here, so there's a tunnel. Usually there's a tunnel because there's a hill, a mountain, something that we need to go under. So we've drilled through. So, or it's a bridge across the top. Either way, we don't see that on this tunnel. I'm going to zoom in here. It's almost, it struck me, it's almost looks like, it works like a real tunnel because it peels him off. But it's almost like it's painted on like a Wile E. Coyote Roadrunner cartoon tunnel, because there's no three-dimensionality. It's not a bridge, it's not an overpass, because there's no road above it. There is a mountain hill, but you can see the sky over here. So it's not much of a mountain to dig through. So again, this is where you simply go, listen, if this is a tunnel dug into a mountain, don't bother with this little bit of sky. It kind of helps to defeat the illusion that this is a tunnel going through a mountain. Just have the rocks up above. That's perfectly fine, and we get it. So, and we have had a fair amount of background. This is good here. The train tracks, Giant Man left looking out back through the tunnel, the smoke, the mountains in the background. And so then when we cut here to just, again, a no background, but a nice shadow under Giant Man, I appreciate that. That's fine. If you've established background in your page, you can then cut here and there to no background, and that's okay. If we had never established the train tracks, the desert, the smoke, the tunnel, all that stuff, then I would want to see that bits and pieces of that here in this bottom panel. Hulk escapes by swimming away, and but eventually even reaches his limits. He cannot go forever, and he's saved by a ship, which is observed by Prince Namor of Atlantis. Kind of weird. We do this a lot in these comics. Again, suspension of disbelief, but if you can view something remotely, that typically means there's some sort of device, camera, something. So how is Namor watching? Is there something in the water? Does he have drones? Is there a satellite? Like, what is projecting this image of the Hulk climbing onto this ship that he can see? And we don't really establish it. We just kind of go, okay, he's got funky Atlantean equipment. We'll chalk it up to that. And this headpiece is super Kirby tech. I talk about it all the time. The key elements of Jack Kirby tech are geometric shapes, circles, rectangles, interlocking with strange angles. So like you have this, it is a symmetrical antenna, almost symmetrical. That's another. It's not quite right. This one comes off this side, points up. This one comes off this edge and kind of goes straight out. So they're not exactly symmetrical. Same thing over here. There's bits and pieces that kind of come off to the right side, not as many on the left. And then this weird angle element wire that comes off of this side over here and angles across. So very Kirby-esque stuff. Close-ups. So I appreciate the fact that he went from looking at behind Namor to the front of him and this crazy headdress to then a close-up. Nice change of camera angles. You have a wider shot, a medium shot, and then that extreme close-up of his face. The problem that I have is the proportions are not kept in place as he's zoomed in. And here's what I mean. You can't see my hands, but if you measure, like I'm going to put my hand up to the screen at this magnification. So the distance between, actually I'm going to use a pen as a reference, right? So from Namor's eye, the corner of his eye to the bottom of his nose is about this much pen cap from the top to my thumb, right? If I go and I zoom in, it is from the corner of his eye to the bottom of his nose is about one pen cap. So we've zoomed, it's about double, but we've zoomed in way further than that. So you notice it looks like the nose is way shorter in the close-up than it is in the medium shot. The eyes are very big, very far apart, which is okay. But the cheekbone, like you can see that on the image before, the cheekbone kind of comes in slightly lower than the nose, right? So your cheekbone kind of cuts down and it's more sort of in between your nose and lip. On the close-up, it's cutting in right at the nose level. So it's a little high there. So anyway, it's just when you zoom in, you've got to keep your scale and your proportions right. If you've established that halfway between your eyes and mouth is your nose, well, you better make sure that that's correct. And so, again, it's just one of those things where we've kind of zoomed in, but we haven't scaled up correctly. And so that zoom in face looks a little strange. On the ship, the Hulk sees an island. He's like, hey, I'm going to go hang out there. Now, Namor has already predicted this, by the way. He's like, oh, the Hulk's going to jump ship. There's no reason he would stay on this ship where people have picked him up. They do say they're going to notify Washington, so he can't stick around forever. Of course, he could just take the ship. He's the Hulk. But he decides, nope, after a little bit, I've rested. I'm going to jump ship and swim over to this little island, and this is going to become my little island. And somehow, Namor is waiting for him. He says he'll be waiting for him. How he knows that it's that island and exactly when it's going to happen, I don't know. I know he's watching from a distance. How far is Atlantis from where the Hulk is on the ship? Who knows? Neither here nor there. Nice seated pose by Namor. The weight on the legs is very nice, kind of leaning on that knee, and the one foot planted a little bit lower is very good. I like the big sort of hulking Hulk here in panel 4. I think that one's pretty good. The water coming off him is nice. And, of course, he immediately gets into, who's the strongest, who's the toughest. And the two are going to fight a little bit first. This is nice where he pins Namor to the rock. Nice motion, real good energy there of him pinning across, and left to right motion, which is very, very good. So that part's really cool. I like that image right there a lot. And he thinks he's got him sort of pinned down in this rock formation. But Namor is too strong, and he breaks out, and the two are going to continue to fight until they get into the water, where Namor is able to overcome the Hulk temporarily, and then is like, hey, listen, I'm the strongest in the sea. You're the strongest on the land. We both hate the humans. Let's work together. Of course, neither trusts the other, but that's what they're going to do. And again, this is where I'm talking about, like, the hairy Hulk is a little too much. I get it. He's a hairy guy, and he's been in the water. That's fine. But it's a little too much for the art. Again, for the size of the character. Each hair would be like this long. So what are you trying to do? Is he shaggy and hairy like Chewbacca, or is it, body hair like a human being, which would be, a little tighter to the body? So, just one of those things where it's a little bit goes a long way, and this is a little too much for me. This profile image of the Hulk, I'll zoom in. Again, this is maybe me. This is even a little bit old for me. I'm a Gen Xer, but this cartoony profile face of Big Dumb Hulk reminds me of what I've seen of Lil Abner from the funny pages in the newspapers. It just reads as just a very big dumb lump of a face. I don't know what it is. I think some of it is the hair. Got this little wingy flip of the back of the hair. I guess is part of what does it for me and makes me go, it feels like, again, cartoon Sunday morning comics, big dumb galoot kind of guy. The profile of Namor is very nice. That is done extremely well. Very solid, very regal, works great. Next page. So this is a they agree to work together. Again, great pose here from Namor. Anatomy is really nice. He's calling a ship, and then as they're in the ship, the Hulk kind of in the background, super shadowy, very moody, is nice. I would have liked to have seen maybe a little more of that on Namor. So you go a little core shadow sort of underneath his chest if he's leaning forward, working the controls of this submarine or ship or whatever it is. That wouldn't be bad to sort of match the lighting. But I like this moody lighting on the Hulk. I think that's pretty cool. I'd like to see more of that. And they come to this island, and they're like, we'll call the Avengers. This is where we'll, make our stand. And here we go. Then they contact the Avengers. It's close to sort of a thematic scene change, but not really, because they talk about this is where we'll draw, the line. This is where we'll battle the Avengers. They don't say anything about, hey, I'm going to contact them. Then you could cut to this and, hey, I just got a message. It's definitely legit from Namor. No, they just say, we're going to fight here. Now you cut to the Avengers. It's close to a thematic scene change, but it's not obvious enough. I'd like to see a little more. Maybe this is where you go, instead of showing the island, you show Namor. Maybe he's on the ship and he's like, hey, I have the perfect island where you can go to. And he's got his radio in hand. And he's like, I'm going to tell the Avengers. Then you see Iron Man on the radio, so that there's a visual transition where the two of them are on the radio together. That makes sense. It's a very nice Hulk. This is a very classic Thor image of him raising up his hammer, being like, "We're gonna fight. This is what it is." Making a bold statement. That part's very good. One of the things I've always found about Thor that can be really hit or miss. Some artists really get it. Some people don't. It's difficult sometimes, I think, to get that helmet placed on the head correctly to where it looks like it's sitting on his head and not like a separate thing that's sort of just floating over the top. Some people don't do the wings enough. Some people do them too much. Again, is the helmet too high, too low? This looks like it is fitting on his head perfectly, which is one of the reasons this is a very iconic and nice view. So Jack Kirby really nailed it on that one. And there they go. The Avengers head out to confront Namor and the Hulk. And apparently wherever they are, not only are they in an island, which gives them both land and sea to utilize in their battle against the Avengers, they've also got a whole bunch of old, looks like military gear. They shoot a howitzer at them. So I'm going to say this is maybe World War II era stuff that's left over. But the Avengers are, ready for that right away. And then Namor's got some Atlantean, I guess, technology of his own. So he's not about to give up. And he uses that on Iron Man. So hang on. Whoops. So as we go, he does that. And it basically, he uses a device. It calls it an emery dust pellet. I don't know what emery is. I know what an emery board is. So maybe he's talking about the material that's on top of it. I thought maybe it was an energy dust pellet. I guess emery is the right word. And it basically locks up Iron Man's armor until Giant Man is able to get some old equipment that appears to be some sort of like air pump. And it just pushes all of the dust out of Iron Man's armor so he's not all locked up. In the meantime, this is a very nice image of Thor flinging his hammer. Again, great extreme action. That arm could not be farther across. He has flung it, and the follow-through is pulling his arm and his body all the way over here. The opposite leg is forward planting. He's pushed off with the back leg. So that's where that power is coming from. This is very, very nice. The hammer coming at us, the reader, with the being foreshortened, the handle being foreshortened and overlapping the cape puts it closer to us than them, as well as the size. So excellent use of all of those aspects to bring us that illusion of three-dimensionality of this hammer coming at us. The only other thing you could do differently is maybe break the panel border here, which would really have it coming at us. But that's something, again, you got to be careful of to do right. And you don't want it to ruin anything else, any other imagery. So again, something to use sparingly, but that could have been done there as well. Let's see. Wasp goes to follow them, and the Hulk, basically smashes the wall or the ground to create this big, sort of sonic boom that takes the Wasp out for a little bit. The rest of the Avengers are coming, and now they're gonna. But this is what I don't get. Again, this is kind of more story than art stuff. They've gone into a cave. Here's the other thing. Namor talks about we've got sea and land. At no point have they used the sea or the ocean. You haven't tricked the Avengers into going into the water. Namor is not in the water. It's like you might as well have been in the desert. There's no reason to be on this island so far. There's an air raid alarm that they've hooked up to some sort of, again, I'm assuming Atlantean technology that's going to, sonically destroy their enemies. But that's what the Hulk just did with his fist. He tells him, cover your ears. He punches the ground or the wall so hard that there's these sonic booms that, certainly takes out the Wasp. So why don't you just have the Hulk continue to do that, or use his giant hand slap that he uses, or there's okay. I don't know why we're getting into old air raid siren stuff, which he never gets a chance to use because boom, the Avengers are there and they are ready to stop him. Now, I spent a good 15 minutes looking at this image and going, I don't understand what I am looking at. Okay. Namor is at the controls of his device. Giant Man grabs his arm so he can't turn it on. This, I would argue, this shadow and this line work here appears to be a doorway. Thor, we are looking down at Thor, the top of his head. We see the top of his shoulders. So Thor is standing on this area, which is apparently ground. So that's the ground. So we're looking down. What is Namor standing on? What is Giant Man holding over here? The wall just sort of stops and turns blue. I'm extremely confused. We come over here. I don't see anything with like terraces, walls. There's a wall and like I guess a tunnel of some kind. Maybe this is their shadows. So wall, floor, but they don't seem to be on a ledge or a parapet or something like that. I don't know what it is. It does say above the Avengers, so I'll give you that. Maybe it is. But if it is supposed to be up on some kind of balcony, it's not explained. It's not shown. If you wanted, comics is a show, don't tell medium. Don't tell me they're above. Show me they're above. This would be a great place for that top-down view where you'd see maybe from behind Hulk, Namor on a balcony, Avengers below, and this thing pointing down at them. That would be great. And then Giant Man either grows bigger or jumps up and grabs Namor. I'm okay with that. The unfinished sort of wall in this blue background, I don't understand that either. That doesn't work for me very well. I don't know how that works. So again, the whole thing very confusing. As you see, I'm trying to work through it here with you on what it is. If I have to spend that much time thinking about it, it's not a good panel. I do like that Namor immediately tries to kind of armbar Giant Man. Because, yeah, even though Giant Man's big, he doesn't have superhuman strength. He has the strength of a man that size, but Namor has actual super strength beyond his, past his size. And so he's going to sort of grapple, but Giant Man is able to fling him away before he can, get his arm either all the way bent through, broken, pinned behind his back, whatever. But yeah, Namor is just a crazy fighting guy. He's getting bounced between heroes, but that doesn't stop him from, landing a punch and damaging Iron Man's armor. Now it's 2-on-1. It starts with Submariner and Thor, and then the Hulk jumps in, and the Hulk is unable to pry Mjolnir from Thor's hands. So this is a twist, I guess, on the mythology that does follow Thor down the line, which is if Thor is not holding his hammer, nobody else can pick it up. You have to be worthy to pick it up. It's not the same as prying it out of his hand. My understanding, we've seen this. We've seen Thor's hammer get knocked out of his hand. There's no reason it couldn't be pulled out of his hand, but then should drop, and then you couldn't lift it again, right? Because you're not worthy to wield it. But this is a little different. In this case, no matter how strong the Hulk is, it's not a matter of strength. It's the enchantment that prevents him from pulling it out of Thor's hands. And that's different than what we're used to. Also, Hulk face here, becoming sort of gone from, Savage Hulk maybe. I'm trying to find a good Hulk. Certainly Big Dumb Hulk, more monstrous Hulk, to sort of almost normal looking guy, but green Hulk. So again, consistency with the Hulk's face would be nice. That's one of the things that I really harp on a lot. And it's changing from panel to panel, not just his expression, but just the way that the features are drawn. I do like using a big panel up here to help show the scale of Giant Man. So Giant Man's back in the fight, and he's trying to wrestle down. Same thing, use leverage and size against Namor. So use the horizontal. It's awkward. Like, why is he laying on his belly? Right? He's so big, he should be standing above, reaching down, stomping down, whatever. But it's because you have the space. You have a big horizontal panel. You want to use that. Put your big giant guy horizontal as well. Otherwise, all we'd see is like the bottom of his feet. So that works. Story-wise, at this point, the Hulk changes into, not only does he change into Bruce Banner when he's irradiated with the machines in his cave, but he also, if he gets too excited, so when he gets too anxious, he'll turn into the Hulk. When the Hulk gets too excited or anxious, he will turn back to Banner, as opposed to the opposite that we're more familiar with. When he calms down, he turns into Banner. When he gets angry, he turns into the Hulk. So that's what's going on at this stage of the Hulk in these early days, and that's exactly what happens. The Hulk is really getting incredibly mad, and he's so mad that he begins to change back into Banner. However, he calls himself twice Bob Banner, and it's better this way, as Bob Banner, as opposed to Bruce Banner. I mentioned this before. This is a very common thing that happened with Stan Lee. So on one hand, part of the reason he would use alliteration, like Bruce Banner, Peter Parker, Stephen Strange, those kind of characters where you're using alliteration, would help him to remember. It was just easier to remember. On the other side, it's easy to mess up and confuse Bruce with Bob. And so I think in the end, they've ended up doing what's called a retcon. This is a retroactive change to continuity. And what they've done is said that his name is Robert Bruce Banner. So even though most of the time everybody would call him Bruce Banner, it's his middle name. His first name is Robert, aka Bob. So seeing Bob Banner or Bruce Banner kind of works either way. Again, it's just a way to write in a reason for your mistake, basically. And that's not an inking mistake. That's a writing mistake. So Stan would have written that dialogue out, and the letter would have said, okay, you calling him Bob? He's Bob. You got it. So yeah. And then nice here, good pose of Giant Man crouching down, but again, using leverage to try to capture Namor. Now that the Hulk is out of the picture, it's Namor against the rest of them. He gets free for a second, and then Iron Man he uses his repulsor rays. So these early Iron Man, nowadays his repulsor rays are almost like laser blasts. He uses them to sort of shoot high energy that can destroy stuff, break stuff, whatever. These early days, it just sort of pushes things away. That's why it's called repulsor. It's repulsing things. So like when they shot the howitzer cannon at him, it didn't destroy the shell. It just sort of pushed it back at the Hulk and Namor. And same thing, he's not blasting him, he's just kind of pushing him with these rays up against the stone wall. And there's some funky anatomy going on here with Namor. We'll talk about that real quick as he is up against the wall. Now he's flexing, trying to fight back, which is fine. So the chest is okay, the shoulders are okay for the most part. This over here, this part of the anatomy doesn't work great. And what I mean is your pectoral muscle, so as he's stretched out, it comes up and it basically meets into your shoulder here. If you can feel it on yourself as you lift your arm up to this angle, there's this piece right here. So your chest muscle, your pectoral muscle goes into kind of and meets your shoulder and the front of your shoulder. His is going underneath the shoulder and almost into under the bicep here, between the bicep and what's underneath is his tricep. So your chest muscle doesn't connect in the middle of your arm. It connects up to your shoulder here, and then your arm connects down into your armpit between your chest, and behind is called your lat. That's your back muscle there, and your arm kind of sits in a pocket in between. So, and that's outstretched arm. That part doesn't work. Your chest, you've got your, which is fine, the chest up top, but then underneath you've got your rib cage, and your rib cage makes sort of a curve underneath. It's your sternum comes down, and then your ribs come down, and then your abdomen, your ab muscles are in the middle there. So what's weird is he should have sort of a curve in here. Like there should be a curve there. I don't know what these lines are. You can see like this would be sort of the top of that rib cage. You'd have that on the same side. This center part here is kind of messed up. Bottom abdomen, the bottom, abs are okay there. It's this piece right here that's kind of wonky. And then same thing as he bends forward, as he's struggling, and he finally gets some water, which why haven't we had water before now? If you're a submariner and your power is dependent on water, I would be close to water. But he breaks the wall, gets water on him, strengthens him enough to really break free. This is a good energy there. I like the jagged inking. I like the rocks flying away. That part's good. Again, this is weird. So this right here, between your chest and where your ab muscles start, there's basically the bottom of your sternum and your ribs. It's this sort of flat piece there, and that protects your what is it called? Your diaphragm, which helps you breathe kind of in between before your ab muscles are there. So this is too high. This should just be down here. This part, this curve, and this curve are fine. Just kind of cut that out, cut a little bit of that out, and then just have your abdomen muscles down below because he's leaning forward, so they're further back. That part would be okay there, but other than that, it's a little wonky in that area. And then that's it. He breaks free. He escapes. Of course, the Avengers do the thing of like, let him go. It's fine. He won't attack humanity again and again and again. That would never happen. So, that's the deal. But then we have the end. So there we go. So the whole thing starts with, we need to find the Hulk because we don't want him running around being crazy and causing trouble. They find him, but they can't stop him. Namor attacks them. They let him go. So nothing changes. There we go. It's now the Avengers are down to 4. They've got, they're missing the Hulk. They didn't accomplish what they wanted, and we'll see what happens. So that's the end of the story. So we'll cut back to the desk and we will wrap this one. So there we go. There is Avengers number 3 for you. It's got some interesting stuff. Very interesting that so early on in these early Marvel Silver Age comics, Fantastic Four, we've seen it with the Avengers. We've seen Submariner appear in appear in X-Men. Always kind of as a pseudo villain. He's villain-ish, but not like straight up terrible villain. But yeah, especially considering that Submariner, if you're not familiar, was a big part of World War II comics and a team called the Invaders. Him, Captain America, Human Torch were a team fighting the Nazis and the Japanese in World War II, as part of those, World War II propaganda, pro-America comics, which were awesome. And he was a hero. Now we get into the 60s and Submariner is always a villain. So kind of interesting. Some good stuff, some bad stuff. Rough. For me personally, I've said this a few times, in terms of Jack Kirby, I certainly do appreciate everything he did. Without this work, we wouldn't have the modern visual language of comics that we have today. He really set the tone, along with other artists, but certainly Jack Kirby is one of the most prolific Silver Age artists and helped, again, really not just establish Marvel Comics, but sort of in general superhero comics as we know them in the current modern age. So I appreciate that. But his early work isn't my favorite. I think he becomes more dialed in, more stylized, but that stylized look becomes clearer. It's more easily understood, translated. So he really begins to dial in exactly his visual language. For me personally, as he gets into the 70s, I think that's where his strongest work is. But hey, your mileage may differ. If you are a huge Jack Kirby fan and you want to let me know in the comments that I'm crazy and that Jack Kirby's early 60s work is his best stuff ever, let me know. Back up your claim. Tell me why. Or do you agree? Or are you like me where you go, hey, I'm much later. I came into comics after Jack Kirby had kind of left the mainstream. I never really read a lot of Jack Kirby comics, so I'm not as big a fan as some of the old guys are. Tell me that too. I definitely want to hear from you and what your thoughts are. So drop those comments. Let me know. Don't forget to subscribe as well. You can get free artwork just by clicking the subscribe button. Help us get to 1,000 subscribers as soon as possible, and we can get that artwork out to folks. And of course, if you love this content and you love the Avengers, join me here same time next week, and we'll be looking at even more Avengers. Thanks.